Good morning. Do you think back the last time that you disappointed someone? That they had an expectation of you and somehow you didn't live up to that expectation. You did your best, but they were disappointed and they told you. And when that happens, sometimes it can blur the lines between what other people expect and their disappointment and what we expect of ourselves. And we can sometimes make it personal. We can take on their disappointment in us. And then we're disappointed in ourselves. And it can be this pretty non-productive, endless cycle. Think for a minute. What are the expectations you have of God? Do you have expectations of God? And has God disappointed you? Have those expectations fallen short and God seemed to fail you? And how do we measure the success of our expectations? Is it when we get what we want, then God's come through and lived up to our expectations? I've been thinking about that a lot this morning and thinking about how do we come to our expectations of God? How do we arrive at those? Usually it's because of a third party. Someone else has told us about God, told us about what we can expect or what we should believe. And when God doesn't live up to what we've been told God should be doing, that's when the expectations are dashed. And we're disappointed, frustrated, maybe even angry. Maybe even so disappointed that we separate ourselves from God for a good long time. Can you imagine what it would be like? I mean, what if the only way you got to know me was through a third party's description? What if you and I were standing side by side and someone else was standing in front of us, a friend to both of us, and that person was describing you to me, or me to you? What if that were the only way that we got to know each other was through a third party? And I think sometimes that's what happens with God. We have third parties that tell us about God. We have Scripture. We have saints, we have holy people, mystics, we have people who are online, and we have lots of people who have ideas about who God is. And we develop our expectations and often our entire relationship on what a third party has told us about God. And imagine if I heard someone describing myself to you and I couldn't clarify any misconceptions. I couldn't step in and say, yeah, but wait. And you had to develop your entire relationship with me based on what this third person was telling you. So when God fails for us in our own minds or doesn't meet our expectations, what do we do with that? What do we do with that feeling? Do we give up? We might be tempted to. I'd say the better choice would be to take that disappointment, that frustration, that anger, hurt in the way God didn't live up to our expectations and talk about it with God. Talk about it with God. Discuss it with God. And then listen. Don't just read God the Riot Act. Listen. Listen to have a fuller picture develop. Listen first person to have God share with you in God's own voice, in God's own words, who God is. And go from there. Let's set our expectations aside and allow God to speak so that when we feel like we've been disappointed in this God that's supposed to do everything and have the greatest love for us, we'll have a better picture. We'll actually have a first-person experience